Thank you so much to Sarah Durham and M. Ironstar for including us into this network knowledge exchange or knowledge network. No, the first one, that one. So we are just so very happy to be part of this and to talk about something that was really striking to me in terms of working on it. So what we'll be talking to today is about an exhibition that I developed called Inside Out. So first, introductions. Who am I? Hi, my name is Amber Anderson. I'm the director curator at the Esteban Art Gallery and Museum. So happy to be here with you guys today. And then also I have Chantal Schultz, who's sitting next to me, who is an artist. And she is the current participant in the outdoor component of Inside Out that's up from February. I think we had it up February
15th.
Yes. And it's up until
it melts.
Yeah, because it's ice. You know, that's all you need to know. We gave it away. So yes. So that is a partnership that we're doing actually with Woodlawn Regional Park, which is a park that's just in the southeast of Esteban, just off past the city limits. So I also do want to mention in the background, we have Zoe Schneider. This is her exhibition, Otherworldly Abundance. And Zoe actually was a participant in the Inside Out project. And actually this is her solo coming from that. So I'm very much looking forward to discussing what this exhibition and this project is. But first I want to give the opportunity for Chantal to introduce herself.
Sure. So I'm Chantal Schultz, and I'm the current curatorial assistant here at the EAGM. And I'm also a visual artist. I grew up just near Esteban in Weyburn and went to school in Alberta and have come back and I'm currently doing my practice here. So.
And just so happy, we just kind of lucked out with having Chantal in this moment in time. So just maybe a little bit about Esteban in general and about the art gallery, and then we will jump into the exciting stuff. So the Esteban Art Gallery Museum is located obviously in Esteban, which is a town of 11,000 people in the southeast region of the province. So we are a mere 10 minutes from the American border, if you could go over the border. So obviously that's been closed. The EAGM was originally built as one of the Esteban or the National Exhibition Centers. So these were, you could actually get grants from the federal government, and this ensured that buildings like this could be built. And then they were loaned works from the National Gallery of Canada. So these are really, the 70s are amazing, let me just tell you. So that was like 1978. And that was a grant that was actually written and received by Mayor Ida Peterson. So of note, she was the first female mayor of Esteban and the first female mayor in all of Saskatchewan. So I know it happened here. So that is some really kind of exciting stuff. So when this program ended in the late 90s, the city of Esteban decided to take up the mantle. They became the primary funder, and then we were aptly renamed the Esteban Art Gallery and Museum. So we are a permanent staff of 2 here. I, of course, Amber Anderson, the director curator. We also have Carly Garneau, who is actually out in her office right now. She is the Education Outreach and Programming Coordinator. We actually have 2 exhibition spaces in this facility that you see in the background. We show 10 exhibitions a year. So exhibitions are usually 8 to 10 weeks long. Outside of this building, in a completely different outbuilding, is our seasonal museum that is dedicated to the Northwest Mounted Police. It's the original barracks that was built to house people. And also it includes Indigenous history local to the area. So one of the things that we've actually had Chantal, who's an intern with me right now, she's been working with a local Bud MacArthur to get his history. He's a really interesting, super awesome guy. And she has been talking to him about his familial history. He has ties to the Northwest Mounted Police. And then of course, also a residential school survivor and just all around. He's also a cowboy, which is just like, anyways, you don't meet Bud, super interesting. And you can't meet Bud, come to Northwest Mounted Police Museum and Esteban, because we're doing a whole exhibit on him and it's going to be really great. So we also should note that we have a collection of Andrew King So he was a business owner, and he took the opportunity. He always ran newspapers, and he would build a side business, and he would create these like show posters. It was very happenstance. Show posters got waylaid one time, and someone came in and said, "Do you have the ability to print? You already are printing newspapers." So he took this opportunity and it really ran with it, and it actually really paid off because he's really quite known actually in the history of design and typography. So these woodblocks range from quite small all the way up to 5 feet. He would sometimes make posters that were multi-page that would actually fill the side of a barn. His works, our examples of his works, can still be found even on the Conklin Show's website. So he was really known for traveling circuses, traveling fairs, kind of these exciting things. And he was the go-to guy for all of Western Canada. So we actually are the kind of the primary holder of the largest collection of his work. And that is also in tandem with us having a small selection of Saskatchewan artists and a contemporary art collection. So that's kind of how we fit into the model of museum here, just so everyone has an idea. So our mission, just so we know, is to make art, culture, and history accessible, meaningful, and vital to diverse audiences of all ages, and to expand the social and cultural horizons of Esteban and surrounding area. So that is something that I really took to heart when I was developing the show that we're about to talk about, which is Inside Out. So if I could just get you guys to start the slideshow. Perfect. So now I'm realizing this will be a challenge for my eyesight. Are you better? Can you read it?
Yeah, I believe I can.
So we just are wanting to do a land acknowledgement because land played a really important role in this exhibition from where it started to where it's going. So I'm just going to have actually Chantal read out a land acknowledgement.
So the Esteban Art Gallery and Museum respectfully acknowledges that we are located on Treaty 2 territory, a traditional gathering place of the Nakota, Nehiwa, Cree, Nakawi, Saulteaux, and Dakota, as well as on Treaty 4 territory, the traditional gathering place for Nehiwa, Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and formerly Blackfoot. We also acknowledge the traditional homeland of the Métis and honor their contributions, whose histories, languages, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant community.
So we just wanted to start there before we went into the next. So if we could just go to the next slide. Thank you. I appreciate this. This is wonderful. Okay, so Inside Out featured artworks of contemporary Saskatchewan artists in specific locations in Woodlawn Regional Park. So that park is located, as I said, just southeast of the Esteban city limits. This project originated as a way to provide physical access to visual arts to our community, while our museum remained closed last season. And at the time when I was developing this, I wasn't really sure when the reopen dates were going to be for the art gallery. As many of you guys were out there, I mean, we were lumped in with, I think, bingo halls and casinos, so it was kind of like, we were happy. This show actually then started on July 20th. It ran to September the 18th. So we were able to physically open our gallery the same day that this started, but our museum, which is the standalone, the barracks, we were not able to open that up. And so this posed a challenge for us because pre-COVID, the museum is a huge draw for us in the summer months. So this is how we get our regional, our provincial, and international because we're so close to the American border. So with that being closed, and then there was also a real big push from Saskatchewan tourism, and then also from just the local like branches of tourism, like to promote regional tourism. What can we all go and do and stay safe and keep ourselves safe? So this became the big push. And then thinking of making art accessible, making sure that I'm giving opportunities to artists, making sure that we are doing partnerships. All this was kind of formulating and cycling through my head. So we wanted to make sure that we were also offering something of substance to the citizens of the area and tourists alike. So my response to these various challenges was to curate an exhibition that served as a lived-in experience. And what I mean by that is that it's not digital. So this wasn't something conceived to only exist on a two-dimensional platform, such as a social media or website. And then what I wanted to also focus on was the outdoors, especially in the summer of 2020, was such a reprieve for people. You had the ability to unmask. We did, of course, encourage safe social distancing and, you know, not to be close to each other, but it was the ability to go and experience something, have a tangible moment with something, and just to experience kind of the beauty of the outdoors, because Woodlawn Regional Park is just quite gorgeous. So in partnering with them, what this garnered me was the ability to promote visual art, to provide an opportunity for artists. A lot of their shows had to be moved or uplifted, and you know that affected them. So this was at least an ability to work with those people and offer something to them. It was a great way to promote Saskatchewan art. So many people would write back to us, this is my favorite piece, or this is the one that I found, or where can we find them all? It also further promoted that regional park, obviously, because it's getting picked up by different institutions are looking into it and promoting it. It created a significant and enduring partnership with Woodlawn as we are carrying forward. We have a February kind of a winter portion that's actually featuring Chantal, and then we are also going to be doing a summer rendition. This also ensured to our municipal and provincial funders that we were offering valuable programming to our community, and that really comes into play, especially I feel when funding dollars are trying to be stretched. You want to make sure that you're doing something, right? So a little bit about Woodlawn here. So Woodlawn is a regional park, so it offers camping, golfing, kayaking, fishing, park trails, an outdoor fitness and yoga area. So it is a huge draw for people to come to this park. And knowing that, and then having previously partnered a little bit with Woodlawn before, I had approached them and said, you know, I have this idea. I would like to exhibit art pieces in flexi-lidded plinths, something this you would normally see, many of you are aware, in a museum, in a gallery. It has that language. Like, I want to go do this and I want to put it outside. They were like, well, that's crazy, but yes. So I was very excited about that. It also was great because I had a built-in audience, because I knew that people were already using that area. It's very heavily, people love to go and walk the nature trails. They like to go and be on the water. They obviously, like I said, camping was a huge part of that. So I should say it was kind of lovely too, because it gave the artists an opportunity, and it was also a really great way to do something that was kind of different with that park, which really made them excited. They were, once they heard about it and thought it was like a little bit crazy, they got really excited about it, and they were just so like, let us know what we can do and how we can help you. And that became really important to us because there's a certain trust that's been built up now. So I will say all the artists selected Inside Out incorporated aspects of nature into their practices. So I selected people that already had that as an essence to their work. And we called this show Inside/Out. And the idea is that we're playing with notions of what would typically be exhibited in the confines of a gallery while incorporating the outdoors and the scenery as a backdrop for the work. So the original show included 4 different artists who were Belinda Harrow, Monique Martin, Regan Lanning, and Zoe Schneider. And then the flip side of this project is that all the participating artists also will have had or will have solo exhibitions with me. And it all included works that were kind of from this show, or were an extension of that thought. And so this notion of non-traditional exhibition spaces was something for me that I got to play with because of COVID-19, so a silver lining. And what I really enjoyed, I have to rephrase, I did not enjoy COVID-19, I'm not enjoying COVID-19. But what I did enjoy about that time, especially when we were shut down, is that there was really time to think and articulate and curate and kind of get back to those brass tacks. And from a lot of you there in small institutions, we all know that you wear many hats and you get pulled in many directions. And so those fundamental things sometimes get pushed to the wayside. So this was kind of a really lovely going back to, and that was something that was really significant to me. So now specifically, what are we looking at? Because we've had this slide for so long. So this is Belinda Harrow's piece, and it's actually a beaver sculpture. So we have taken, she requested us to find twigs that were in that area. So these are twigs that were sourced from Woodlawn Regional Park. And then we kind of built a nest, and you can kind of see in the top picture on the left-hand side that she has carved into it. So it looks like the beaver has taken a chomp into it. And the artwork is actually called Fells. So this is one of the first pieces. And of course, thinking in regards to the placement of the work and the scenery, I placed it actually close to this particular river because they actually had they had beavers in this river, and sad story, they had to trap them. But this is kind of a nod to that, saying that is something that was here, and talking about that precariousness. And I think that's in Belinda's work between the interactions with humankind and nature. So kind of the problems with it, and also people really like, because they're like, well, what's happening? And interesting story, when I given Belinda the measurements, like I didn't take into account that this has to sink down. Like, let's talk about some of the things you fall into when you haven't done a project before. You have to problem solve. So the beaver is actually supposed to be sitting on top of the stool. And I think that gives it a stronger sense of that balance or imbalance, because this idea that the leg might break, but because she didn't have enough room for that, we had to improvise. So thank you, Belinda, for improvising with me. And then we'll just flip to the next slide. So obviously Zoe Schneider's work is behind me. This is actually Zoe's piece. We actually have, I don't think you can see it in the background, but we actually have that piece currently in this show. And a lot of Zoe's work, she's influenced by, I would say, a variety of things. She's always talking about this idea of fat acceptance, fat culture. She also is talking about this idea of alien beings feeling alien and otherness. So I think she also got really interested because she started traveling around to all these different grotto sites in Saskatchewan. And a lot of them have like mosaic use of like rocks and just different elements. So she was very influenced by the grottos. And I think she actually looked up the original word of grotto, and it is grotto-esque, which she thought was really close to grotesque. And so there's this real play. So it's, you can see this, it's kind of a like this roundish shape. So that's actually kind of like, it's not actual bread. It's like a spongy, how do I describe this? A sponge, a sponge, like, you know, it's not real. I guess it's artificial is what I mean. And then this, you have this globe shape. And then these are stones that she have are like glow in the dark stones. And then the original, so this is also kind of a fun moment. So I had this in this original location. And it was very, as you can see, it's very scenic. It had this huge sky backdrop. It was very, it's a shale pit. So it has these beautiful gradations of like red rock and like grays. It's really, I mean, they call it a shale pit. I'm like, I love this pit. It is just so gorgeous, honestly. I mean, really, truly, right? And, so I was like, I want this. This is the perfect location. It just like leads into this notion of space and light. And so it's also a place that people like to ATV, which I did not know about as a non-ATVer. So I think we had it out there for the first 24 hours, and people came, they cracked off the plexi to open it, and they looked at it, and then they put it back together. So I mean, I just was like, whoa, like they didn't break any, well, they broke the plexi, but they didn't harm the piece at all. So I actually ended, like, this is the original spot that I wanted it. This is how I want people to think of it. But we actually had to move it into the park, and I picked a different location that was close to where people did like tent camping, with this idea that it was kind of safely nestled in there. And this idea of like being kind of nurtured and cared for. So that's, you know, and thinking about these projects, and we'll get to that at the end, where it's like, taking. So I'll get you to flip to the next slide here. So this is actually, that is Monique Martin herself in the bottom left-hand side. So she actually, and I mean, I think this just testifies to the fact that we all need to get out of the house. I think she just drove down from Saskatchewan to, you know, set up these works. And what you're looking at, obviously dandelions, but they are all made from paper. So she has silk screened these things. They are so articulated that you have to, like, even up close, the trompe l'oeil is unreal. And that means to fool, that's a very artsy term. That means to fool your eye, meaning that you can't really push and pull and say, this is real, this is not real, or artifice. So this show, of course, context is everything. So she's another one of the artists that she had a solo exhibition. And so in the slides coming up, we'll get to show you kind of how these things changed from outdoors inside a plexi to being outside of plexi indoors. So this was actually put into a meditation circle. And it was really, people really loved it. And like, there was some kids that had kind of maybe messed around with it, but like the people that run the outdoor fitness area are so awesome. Like they were like, this happened and like we fixed it. I think they added like, I don't know, like a contemporary art, and they found something. I found like metal in the trees, and they put a little label up. So it started becoming like their own curation of things. It was really quite funny. It's also, I mean, obviously 2-dimensional pictures of this experience don't necessarily do it justice, but it was really kind of calming, soothing. And I think with Monique's work, the work itself is called Context is Everything, meaning that you can look at a weed and think of it as a weed. You can look at, I mean, the dandelion has so many uses medicinally, also just for nourishment, for food. So it was really kind of fun to play with it in that space where you're supposed to have a deep kind of connection with your surroundings and to think about things. So that's where we put context is everything. And then we'll go to the next slide. And then this is Regan Lanning, and it's called Apology. And so a lot of Regan's work, so she had a solo with us, like before the concept of this came. And it was just with her, I wanted her to have that opportunity. Also too, when I was selecting artists, it was about trying to pick people that were within a radius for which I could probably drive or get to without going to a different province or going too far afield. So with Regan living in Weyburn, which is kind of in our southeast region, it was lovely to reach out to her. She had made this, it's in line with her work that she's done before, which is all about kind of emotional states of being with people and then within herself. So this is a continuation of that. And then she just made a freestyle. It was just the balls and playing with this notion of shape and design. And it was one of the ones that we had put on. It's kind of on the road into the park. And there's a setup of these kind of trees, this grove of trees. And it just sat there. I mean, you can kind of tell from the one image that it just sat there, it just kind of popped up and it just sat like it was kind of part of nature. And that was the fun push and pull, because there couldn't be anything more artificial about this, but it just read as organic. So we really tried to play with placement. That was just as important as anything else in regards to the reading of the work. So that was the original Inside Out that took place last year. And if we flip to the next slide, I promise Chantal, I'm almost done. So this is Context is Everything. And so this is how it transformed into the actual space that we're sitting in right now. And that was so much fun to see that when we had them in the outdoor exhibition Inside Out, you know, we had just kind of filled the whole thing, so it was packed, the pedestals was packed. And then with this, because we actually ironically had more space inside, we really played and we decided on a layout, Monique and myself, so that it would mimic the idea of how dandelions actually physically grow. Because she made a study of that to see the pattern of how they like to manifest. And, you know, and thinking like, if you've got a gust of wind, like, would they all just blow into the corner? And so it was, I mean, I'm so happy that she is a fit person. I think there's 1,300 of these. So like 1,300 squats or bend downs. And like, I would be crippled. She did it. I think her fitness level must be insane. And then with the lighting, it was a big conversation. So we had lit these so that it actually mimics dappled sunlight. So that was, again, playing with something. And I really enjoyed having that opportunity to do that outdoor thing. And obviously it was with the guys, or making sure we were offering something to the people, for the public, and also for the artists. But it really you got to think about the works really carefully, because you were dealing with them in two different ways. And so you got to engage and really, really think about the work and come up with some creative strategies for how they could be set up or displayed. So if we could go to the next slide. So I know, Darnie, we're sitting in it and you're looking at it at the same time. So this is Zoe Schneider. This is her Otherworldly Abundance, the whole vision, the whole thing, which is kind of a series of 2 or 3 different works that she has put together. So she has her little Numina character, which is actually a 3D rendering of the artist herself. So she had done a body scan, and then she had made herself into a green alien goddess, which one does when they get a 3D body scan done, I feel. And so it's basically these little worlds that she has made out of materials. She really likes to have a DIY aesthetic. So a lot of these things are made out of basalt though. And just different things that you can find around in terms of shapes and different building materials, such as like the blocks that you can use for like patios and that kind of thing. So, and then she has like the hanging pieces. So when you come in, it actually almost feels like a play, if you will, because it's kind of a setup. It's kind of like a scene, and she's created a world for people to get involved in and kind of question what they're looking at. It's very vibrant. It's very cheery. And it kind of attacks some issues such as thought acceptance in such a way that it's very approachable and it doesn't feel so heavy. So that was those two, and that's the flip between the two. So if we go to the next slide. That brings us finally to Chantal. So through Chantal, obviously kind of working with me as an intern, I was introduced to her work, and I was really engaged with this idea because she's done work in untraditional places before. And she has also thought about this idea of bacteria and organic materials, and that's a huge part of her work. And I'm going to let you talk about it, obviously, but I was very drawn to this. And then of course I was like, do you have a desire to do something crazy? And you said yes. So this is Chantal. This is Chantal.
Yeah, so this work, I feel like I kind of turned the idea, like flipped it around and brought the outside, we'll be turning the outside in, and brought these materials into this location and made a site-specific installation rather than taking something that would normally be exhibited in the gallery and bringing it outside. What I'm going to be doing is kind of taking something that looks like it's from the earth and these organic materials, and then bringing them in for the solo exhibition coming up in April. So with this work, I had actually created these ice sculptures that were embedded with these different inclusions of kitchen scraps, coffee grounds, tea leaves, other biomaterials, and they ended up really mimicking this shale pit that Amber spoke of, that, you know, it's talked about as this pit, but it's actually quite beautiful. And so I think the works also kind of help to pull out that natural landscape and those formations, as the works kind of do look like geological formations themselves.
I also just like this idea, because you were collecting all these scraps and doing all these things kind of in COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea that they almost become, because a nourishment, this idea of self-nourishment, self-love, you know, I can never pronounce the tea right.
Kombucha.
Thank you. Like it was just, everyone got into that. So I was actually really intrigued that that became part of your collection. And so this is kind of like a frozen in time moment that for only so long.
Yeah, and so there's 2 locations in the park. So there's this in the shale pit and then also in the river. So yeah, I was using these materials, thinking about them as this kind of collection, this evidence almost of like your daily rituals, these processes of nourishment or like fermentation, and then bringing them out into this space. And then also with them being in the park as some place that people can go to get out of the house, go for a walk. People have been staying really close to home during this time, like at a time they might be traveling. So bringing them to that space and also having people engage with them during their like daily rituals of going for a walk and experiencing these materials. So that was really exciting for me. And if you go to the next slide, I can show you a little bit about how they were constructed. So they started out with these construction tubes that were adhered to plywood with various materials, just to ensure that there was no leakage through a lot of trial and error. And as you can kind of see in the second image, that's after it's been filled. And just with the rapid expansion from the freezing temperatures, when I was filling them up, it was that weekend that it was minus 50 degrees and everything was freezing like instantly, even this mass amount of liquid. So you can kind of see it bulging out of the material that's encasing it. And then from the next slide, there's just a little bit more about the process of filling and transporting, moving the liquids and materials from one location to the next in these conditions. And then the last image there also shows a little bit of me filling it with all these other inclusions, my compost bin sitting beside me. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the process. It was seemingly simple, but a lot of back and forth, just moving water with a sump pump and generator from this gallery location to the outside location. So there was a lot of back and forth. And you can kind of see how icy the back of the truck was just from everything freezing instantly. And then the last slide there will show you the works that are in the second location, and then just a couple of close-ups of a couple of individual pieces.
So, and this one has garnered a lot of interest from the community. Just in people trying to figure out the fabrication is a big part. How did you make it? How did you do it? What is it made of? And we've gotten some really, like, you were approached by CBC to do CBC radio. It's like, how did you find, this is before we'd even done like a press release. So it's been, in terms of that, it's been quite engaging for how far this has gone in terms of interest for people. So for the museum members that might be watching, I will say, for me, I guess the suggestion would be to like kind of think of the sky's the limit, like think of those really big ideas and then start paring it down instead of saying, well, we can't do that. Because if you say that, then you won't do it. Whereas if you kind of start with something big, you start making it more accessible to you and like using your different means. So we already had plinths. I already had that to my availability. I already had funding in place. So I already had that in place. At the time, I actually was working by myself up until June because, you know, my other employee was on CERB. So it was also in creating the show thinking like I might be the one doing the whole thing. So that's why I had just been like, okay, I'm gonna do 4. That seems manageable. I'm gonna find someone with a truck. You know, you start thinking about those ideas. You know, and partnerships, that was a really big partnership with the park. I already kind of had that in place. And then also too, talking to these artists, because everything was at risk. This was not a monitored space. There was no video, there was no, so it was a big, you know, like they got like, all of them got like a quarter of like of a show fee. And so the idea, you know, when I talk to them is that I'm like, you know, I'm going to try to do my best. You know, we're going to go out and look at that work every day, but people had 24/7 access to this. So that was the brilliance of it. And that was also the highest risk component of it, because you just simply can't protect things like that. So, I mean, like the ATV thing happened like immediately, like that was like the next day. So, you know, the thing is, in having that conversation with artists, it was about saying like, listen, I'm going to do my best to make sure that these works get back to you, but I can't guarantee. And it was about just having a really honest conversation with people so that they knew what they were getting into and then could make appropriate choices. And then the nice thing to you, having like Chantal here has been really great, because she was able to kind of work on site, which was a big game changer, as opposed to just give me something, you know. So that was important. I think realizing what resources are available to you. And I think too, like in thinking about what makes your community unique. So for us wanting to showcase, I think Woodlawn is something really special for this region. I mean, I just love that shale pit. Like, I don't care. I love this pit. It's amazing. And I think, you know, when you're thinking about these different museums, and I mean, there's always kind of this challenge because, you know, you're working with precious things that you might not want to put outside, but is there a way? Is it like through maybe an artist partnership? Is it through, can you maybe get something like 3D scanned? So it's maybe not the original. Maybe is there a way to kind of do that and maybe formulate different partnerships, whether that's with your municipal government or maybe with artists or someone else in your community? Because I think this is when you'll start coming up with some really fantastic ideas. And then excitement, if everyone's excited, then it's going to be an exciting moment for sure. So I think that's our presentation, unless you guys have some questions for us. And thank you to our funders. Lest we forget.
I guess one of the questions I had was you may have mentioned this already and I might have just missed it, but what was the duration of the event
that took place in the summer in 2020 was from July 20th to September 18th. So they were out there for a couple of months. I mean, it's a long time for lots of things to go wrong. And, you know, I think it really spoke to how much people respected that this was there. Because at any given time, it could have been graffitied, it could have been vandalized. I mean, honestly, they could have picked that beaver out and thrown it into the river, you know? And I just was like pins and needles, right? Because I was like, oh, because we had done our due diligence to make sure that they were like as much as we could protect these things, we did. You know, because the plexi is actually like screwed in, these are like hammered into the ground. But if somebody has a desire, I don't think you're going to stop them. And I think it really spoke to people's, you know, if we mess with this, we won't have it. And so nothing was actually broken, nothing was actually stolen. And quite frankly, because I was like, oh, I don't know, because we're talking about like humidics that I can't control. Sun was another one, because, you know, especially with Monique, I was most worried because paper, I was like, oh, is this gonna get sunburned? And I mean, knock on wood, it all just came according to Hoyle, and I was so really happy with the community. And now we have Chantal, because this is the next big fear, because I'm like, we're not gonna come out there with a bat. I don't know, I always think worst case scenario, and no one has lived up to my expectations yet. Now I've mentioned that, I put it out into the universe, like the secret, but that hasn't happened. There hasn't been any shenanigans. There hasn't been any kind of anything, except for people looking at it. People going and looking at it, because you have gone to do documentation and run into people while they're looking at it. So, you know, I think people love public art. Quite frankly.
That's so fantastic and so heartening to hear that there would be that level of respect for that long of time for art out in the community. I'm really glad to hear that.
if people think that COVID-19 put a lot of roadblocks in place, it also tore down a whole bunch, right? Where it was like, I'm going to take a couple months to come up with this idea, and then I'm just going to work on curation, and then I'm just going to do this lovely experience. I'm just going to work with these artists, and they're just going to give me something to put outside. Like, so many yeses in a world that you normally would have met so many no's. So I think it's an encouraging moment. That's, I think, with the museum membership that we're kind of talking to right now. I would say, try to figure out what that risk taking is, because it can actually really land you with something really special.
It's really exciting. I think I just have one more question. Kind of building, since it was such a success, do you think that this is something that you would consider doing again in partnership with the park or that sort of thing?
We've done the winter versions up right now, and then we're also doing it into the summer. So we're going to do another, like, kind of a round 2, if you will. And, considerations. The first time around, like I said, it was kind of working with people that I already had a relationship with, because they were going to have shows. Their shows all kind of got moved and bumped. And then with Chantal being here, obviously, that was really perfect, because it was almost like a residency. Mm-hmm. In a time where residencies can be kind of hard right now, because, do you want people traveling and intermingling around different communities? So, I mean, this is where I do encourage people, because some people may have returned home, like students or whoever, that normally maybe not be in these small communities, but find themselves precariously there. So, like, let's make hay when the sun shines, people. Like, use that as much as you humanly can. But I will say, moving forward, something in terms of consideration is probably reaching out to, I think, because the idea of it dealing so much with the land itself, I think it's really important to start considering Indigenous, having that outreach to that community, to have artwork or to have something in play there. Because that, it wasn't necessarily an oversight, but it's something that I realize needs to happen. And so that's kind of one of the focuses that I'm thinking about right now for the next rendition. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much for agreeing to participate in our network knowledge exchange and present on this wonderful exhibition. I actually do have a random question. I think at the beginning of your talk, you mentioned people having difficulty finding things.
Right. So, and I mean, this is now something, so at the time, Woodlawn has all these different trails, and we were trying to pick locations. It had to speak to the work, it had to make sense with the work, but I also chose locations that you can really kind of get to by a vehicle, and with the idea, because we were checking them constantly. And my other concern was, if we got them too far, because there's lots of walking paths that go in, like, you can get lost in there. And that was my biggest concern, pardon me, is that if we got it too sheltered, then I think you really are asking for it in terms of potential vandalization or something to happen, because you can't really have access to it. So we tried to pick things that were relatively open, but still some of those spots, and I mean, the park now has maps they've created, because that was one of their COVID-19 projects, is they created maps of the park. So now you can be like, here's this map, X marks the spot. I mean, when we had done 2020 version, I should say, we kind of activated it. So we have all sorts of different murals and different kind of public art moments already in Esteban. And so what we did was kind of like a scavenger hunt, where we're like, go take a selfie or take a picture of each of these pieces. And every time you'll get entered in for a prize. And then we went to all the local businesses who were extremely generous. And we got like a whole whack of prizes. And so we incorporated the Inside Out project into the scavenger hunt. So then if there was even a greater push for you to go find it. And also too, we had done that because we didn't really have this map system in place. Like now we have that. So it's kind of easier to be like here and here, right? But that is one of the ways we did encourage people to get out there and find it, so to speak, was part of this scavenger hunt win a prize concept. And people did it en masse. I think we had like 400 entries. because what else were you doing? And it was something you could do with your entire family, or with your grandma, or with your auntie. And it was really fun because people were like, I didn't know, I can't find this, or I didn't know we had this. And so that classic thing, right? So it was a real way to activate the project for the community.
So interesting. I'm glad to have heard about it in more detail for sure.
Oh yeah, those were you.